Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. בתיאבון.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. You're really lucky that you have Dvorah as the head of your community. She's a wonderful person. And thank you for inviting me to present my talk, which combines few of my loves. First of all, I love Jewish communities. I love people. I love art. And I like to work with people, teaching them what I know. And I like Israel and talk about Israel and talk about a topic that even for me as an Israeli was not so known, the role of the Zionist women pre-statehood and the importance of women. Usually the history is told more from the men point of view. And I want to tell you the story from the women point of view and talk about women that were not so known. Maybe you know about Golda Meir, but you'll be surprised of how many more women are just amazing women. So I'm going to now share the screen. I think that the questions, if you have any questions, keep them to the end. I'll do the presentation. You can ask the questions at the end. Also, I shared the presentation with you that if you want to see it again, I shared it with Dvorah and she can put it on the YouTube. And any other questions, and if you want to get better in collage or to know more about Israel and this topic, I can suggest some sources. So now I'm going to share the screen.
We have the big screen. Yeah, so she's going to take over and I'm going to, okay, there. Perfect.
So the name of the talk is Jewish Women Pioneers and the Creation of the State of Israel. And I just want to let you know that in my presentation, I'm using my art. So this is right away an example of an iconic person that she was a pioneer. And in my art, I even give them new names. They're born again. So this woman, I called her Fania. And Fania worked very hard like the men. You know, she came to Palestine and worked in the fields and paved roads and did all the other jobs that men did. And the idea was we must win. So this piece, you can see it's a mixed media piece that it's collage and paint. And during the whole presentation, I'm going to use my art. So just to create a framework for my talk, you know this guy, Theodor Herzl, right? I'm sure that you heard about him. So in 1897, there were only 30,000 Jews who lived in Palestine. But by 1948, there were about 650,000 Jews in the new state. So I don't know if you know that Theodor Herzl organized a Zionist Congress in Basel every year. And he stayed in a hotel that I happened to be there last year in Basel, the Three Kings Hotel, that you can still visit the hotel, and even sometimes they let you go to Herzl's room and stand in the balcony overlooking the Rhine River. It's really moving. And there Herzl said the very famous sentence, if you will it, it's not a dream. If you will it, it's not a dream. In Hebrew, im tirtzu ein zo agada. So the pioneering women, Zionist women, founded many of the new institutions, and they allowed over 500,000 immigrants to settle in Eretz Israel, and the institutions that they started still exist today. And in this piece, you can see Theodor Herzl. He looked modern, and on top of it, this is a handmade paper. And on top of it, you can see the Jewish Colonial Trust, which was the first bank. And if people gave money to buy land, they got a certificate. And this is an example. And I was lucky that I still had some original documents. And in my art, I combined original documents. So you can see it in this piece. I also had a very lucky opportunity to create a show that I call it Beyond the Balcony. So Theodor Herzl stand in Basel in the balcony, and I created something beyond the balcony. What happened in my mind? And I created a story. I'm a storyteller. What happened from Basel and on, how Israel and developed. And this is a piece that I created for the show in UJA headquarters in New York City. And this was a site-specific piece. It's a triptych. In the middle, you can see the immigrants leaving the El Al plane. And I used a quote from the Isaiah, from the prophet Isaiah, Ishayahu. Bring my sons from far and my daughters from the end of the world. And Avi banai merachok ubnotai miktzei haaretz. And you can see in the middle again the immigrants coming to the state, modern state. And on the two sides, on the right side, on the left side, are combined passports, like British passports and different pictures of immigrants. And again, it's a mixed media. I combine collage and print, different techniques in one piece. And you know, there's one thing that we always forget is why the state of Israel was born, why it was created. So this is, my talk is also to bring back to your awareness why the state of Israel was established, to give the Jews a safe place to live and to have a state of their own, and to develop the state and to be a light to other nations. Here you can see periodic photos of daily life. You can see on the lower left some women work in the fields, and women worked really hard in the fields and farming. You can see babies were born in different clinics, that they weigh the babies, how the immigrants came to Palestine with boats and planting and picking up the oranges and daily life. So this is periodic photos from Palestine. Those were the days. So basically, when I grew up, as I told you before, I didn't know so much about the women that I'm going to talk about. And recently, there's a new focus to talk about the roles of pioneering women, not only in Israel, but all over the world. So there's a new program in schools to talk about the contributions, about the unknown stories of these women. And recently, the Israeli Education Ministry, that was held by Vitzo, introduced to high school students the history lessons to acknowledge such contributions, the contribution of these Zionist women. In Haifa, they are building a new Israeli Women Museum that will tell the story of the women. And similarly, in America, there's a new museum, the Smithsonian American Women's History Museum, that is being built. And in this piece, that is another mixed media piece, you can see Fania again, that many pieces of my art is about women. I'm really interested in women and to tell the stories of these women. So you can see Fania with the basket on her shoulder, and you can see the sentence planting for peace, and again some like collage pieces of farming machines and some sheep and the fields. And I love to use in my art bold colors that people will really pay attention to the topic of women and pay attention to these women. Some of the new institutions pioneered by women pre-statehood. So I want to give example of some of these institutions. For example, adult healthcare, child and baby healthcare, young women education, training of women for economic independence. They taught women how to have professions and how to earn money. new generation of teachers and students, absorption of youth, aliyat hanoar, farming and settlement, participation. So you know that when Jews lived outside of Palestine, they didn't have land. So this is the first time that they had the opportunity to work the land, and women too. They men and women work the land. Defense. There was an organization called Hashomer, which means the guard. They protected the orange groves and they rode horses. Political power and voting, giving voting rights, art and culture, Women's International Zionist Organization, WIZO, and the emergence of the new Israeli women. So this is all examples of the new institutions pioneered by women pre-statehood. So imagine pre-statehood. This was just amazing array of topics that these women worked on. So the most famous woman in this category of pre-statehood Zionist women, I'm sure that you heard about her, Golda Meir. She was 23 when she arrived to Palestine in 1921. Golda was born in Kiev and grew up in Milwaukee, raised in Milwaukee. She contributed immensely to the establishment of the State of Israel. She was a labor leader, fundraiser. I don't know if you know about Golda. She never left the house without a bag because she thought maybe someone will give her a check. So she always left the house with the bag. She was a big fundraiser. She was a diplomat in Russia. I happened to be in Russia, in Moscow, and I saw the synagogue when Golda was praying. I went to the balcony and saw where Golda was sitting. So for 50 years, she was very active. And she was a prime minister from 1969 to 1974. Here you can see my art piece, which is actually printmaking, which I printed two things, one on top of the other. In the background is Jerusalem, and on top is Golda. And Golda was also printed on money bills. So when you went to the market in Jerusalem to buy food, you paid in Goldas, in the money, in the currency that was on this time. Golda really dedicated her life to the Zionist idea and to Israel. Here you can see a piece that I made again for UJA Federation show, Beyond the Balcony. And you know that in Judaism, the Torah is a scroll, and we have many scrolls, you know, some other scrolls. So I decided to create a scroll, a Megillah. Megillah is a scroll in Hebrew, that telling the story of Israel. And the story is still told. So you can see here the scroll. And I don't know if you know that only 2 women out of 37 people who signed the Declaration of Independence, Megillat HaAtzmaut, in 1948. So there were only 2 women who signed this declaration. Here you can see in the middle the signature, the original signatures that I created a printmaking of it and different prints and photos of this time. So Golda was one of the women who signed this Independence Declaration, and Rachel Cohen-Kagan, who was the chairperson of WIZO Israel. So the other people who signed the declaration were men, and Golda was very moved that she was invited to participate in the ceremony that happened in Tel Aviv Museum. And you can even, when you go and visit Israel, you can visit it even today, the place where the Declaration of Independence of Israel was signed. Megillat HaAtzmaut. So this is another woman that I admire. Her name is Henrietta Sold, and you can see her photo below. And Henrietta Sold cared really about healthcare. And you can see in my art piece, it's some kind of a clinic and people being treated. So she was born in Baltimore in 1908, and only in the age of 49, not so young, she traveled to Palestine. And I don't know if you know that the conditions were not so easy. It wasn't easy to live in Palestine in those days. Her mission was the health, education, and the welfare of the Jewish community. She thought that there's a lot to do in this area. So she joined 6 other women to found Hadassah. And if you go to Israel today, you can find Hadassah Hospital. It's a renowned hospital. You can see the Chagall glass windows there too. So she joined 6 other women to found Hadassah, which recruited American Jewish women. And you know that the healthcare was not in such a good shape. And Henrietta Sold also helped in the youth aliyah, in Aliyat HaNoar. And this is an initiative to bring children that most of them were orphans after the Holocaust to Israel and to other places, and mainly to Israel. And the kids who came to youth aliyah by the help of Henrietta Sold, they learned different professions, and she actually saved their life, and they started life like normal children. So this is Henrietta Sold. Dr. Elena Kagan, she really cared about baby, child, and healthcare. She was a pioneer in the pediatric medicine. She was a doctor, founded the first Jewish children's hospital in Palestine in 1916. With the help of Hadassah, she led the establishment of healthcare for mothers, infants, and young children. So when I was born, my mother took me to a clinic called Tipat Chalav. Tipat, the name of the clinics that was established by Elena Kagan was Tipat Chalav, a drop of milk. So my mother used to bring me, and they weigh me, and they saw if I develop well. And this was very common in my generation to go to these clinics. But the mother took the babies every week or every few weeks to these clinics. So the first clinic was in the old city of Jerusalem, and it was the first kind of these clinics in Palestine. Before her, it didn't exist. So she instructed pregnant women and mothers in the care of the children and promoted also preventative medicine. So this was something very big in this time. Now we take so many things for granted. So this is Elena Kagan, and in this piece, you can see the child in the center and the family behind. And this was very moving, and I still have today the booklets that my mother kept, how much I weighed and how I grew every month, every week, from Tipat Chalav, from this clinic. The next woman that I will talk about, her name was Recha Freier. Her main interest was youth aliyah, what I mentioned before, bringing kids to Palestine and to create for them new life. And many of them lived in kibbutzim and learned professions and farming, taking care of animals. So Recha Freier founded youth aliyah. She started it in Berlin. Tens of thousands of young Jews were transferred, those who were saved before World War II and after. They were transferred to the UK, Palestine, and elsewhere. I don't know if you know about, you heard about Dr. the Youth Aliyah to Israel, and she actually wanted to be a teacher. And my mother she went to school to be a teacher, to a seminary for teachers, and she actually helped Dr. Ruth in Hebrew because Dr. Ruth only spoke German. So that's my personal story, Dr. Ruth, how she helped her to learn the language and to feel more comfortable in the land. So Recha Fryer advocated for absorption of young immigrants through agriculture. And here you can see, this is actually was a stamp that I was influenced by, a stamp. It was made to celebrate the Youth Aliyah. And you can see the girl watering the plants, and in the background, a kibbutz, and the boy holding, well, like, felt really good that, you know, they have a new land and happiness and start their life again. They went through a lot in this time. Here you can see the show. Most of my shows, by the way, were in organizations and in community centers, because I believe that some people don't have the opportunity to go to museums or galleries, and I want to show my art to community and to also teach them about Judaism, about Israel. So I had an opportunity to do a show in 14th Street Y, which is a community center in 14th Street off First Avenue in Manhattan. I called the show Albert's Dream. I gave the name of a boy who came from Youth Aliyah, by the Youth Aliyah. I named him Albert. So most of the people that I create in my art, I give them names. Fania, Albert. So Albert, again, came in Youth Aliyah. He only found in the center, you can see a suitcase. He only found a suitcase that his mother left. When he opened the suitcase, he found some keepsakes that the mother kept. And on the right side, here on this side, you can see the side of the mother. She kept some gloves, a little mirror, and an apron. And on the left side, you can see Albert's side, that I created even a hat from paper mache. And I interviewed the guard who worked in this place, and I said to him, what is the piece that really talks to you, that you think it's most powerful in your eyes? And he said, the hat, because when Albert wears the hat, he feels like a superboy. So that was very moving for me, of someone that didn't grow with knowing about the history of Israel and how he reacted to this show. And I did a workshop, a collage workshop with families, and this was very moving. And you can see here the bag that Albert had, and in the middle, I put the quote, if you will it is not a dream, again, referring where it all started, with the vision of Theodor Herzl. So Theodor Herzl was the visionary of the State of Israel. We need visionaries that will create big ideas and will follow these really interesting ideas. And again, thanks to Theodor Herzl and the hard work of all the immigrants who came and the leaders, that we have the State of Israel. So if you will, it is not a dream, the mother's side and Albert's side. And this was the whole wall in the entrance, and I had some other pieces. And I like to bring to my shows some objects. I also collect things. I like to collect things. Dvorah mentioned that I grew up in Jerusalem, and every weekend we went to the market in the old city and bought some things. So basically, in my inventory, I have a lot of collections, and I never know how am I going to use it. And suddenly, when I have a show, I use my collections in my collages, and I like the idea of to do installation style art. Another important woman was Rosa Welch-Strauss. Rosa really cared about women's rights. She was a women's rights activist. In this image, you can see the founders of the Union of Hebrew Women for Equal Rights in Eretz Israel. It was established in 1919 to campaign for women's suffrage in Palestine. The organization battled for equal rights for women until the establishment of the state in 1948. Then it merged with Vizo organization. So you can see all these women, they were very strong women, and you know, even if there's a visionary like Rosa or the other visionaries, they cannot do something alone. They ask their friends and relatives to join them, and together, like together we win. So they ask all the people women that they know to help them in their idea and mission. And that's what you see in this picture, Rosa's friends who believed in the same idea. Sarah Azariahu, she believed in the empowerment of women through education. And as I told you, so when I did the research for this talk, I discovered her. We never learn about it in school. It's really amazing. I grew up in Israel. We never knew about these women. And I hope that now the new generation will learn more about these women. And maybe you can educate your friends and families about these women. So Sarah was an educator. She was a math teacher, which was also very special. She was a women's activist in equal rights for women, and she was the secretary of the Union of Hebrew Women for Equal Rights. Her work centered on teaching girls in Jaffa, Jerusalem, and Haifa. She argued that the fight for equal rights for women was a fight related to the quality of life for everyone in the new society. And in this collage, I combined different pieces, and I even put my mother, you can see my mother's picture in the middle, like uniform of a female soldier, girls, Theodor Herzl, and some other images from Israel. And actually it was based on matchboxes. I don't know if you know that people collected matchboxes in the old days. And I happened to have, someone gave me a collection from his grandparents and parents who collected for years matchbooks from journeys that they made. And one of the journey was when he had the bar mitzvah, he went to Israel, and I combine it in this piece. So everything in my art is every person and every object has a journey. Not only people have journeys, but objects have journeys. Hannah Maisel Shochat, she was training women in agriculture. So as you know, women never worked in farming and agriculture. So she was an educator in agriculture and Zionist activist, and her effort resulted in establishment, something really interesting, several training farms. So she established training farms where those, like the women, could learn professions, how to be farmers. So those who emigrate to Palestine could learn how to work the land. So men learn how to work the land and women too. So she created training framework, pushed for establishment of educational farms. You call it in Hebrew, Chavat Ha'alamot. Chava is a farm, Alamot are young women. So she created Chavat Ha'alamot, these training farms, and she educated women how to work in the farms. And you can see again the basket and working, and in the background a Jewish community. So these women were very diligent. They woke up early in the morning, went to sleep also early that they have enough strength to work really hard, paving and working in farming and anything that was needed. So that was Hannah Maisel Shochad. Maybe you heard about this woman, Vera Weizmann, who was Israel's first lady. She was married to the first president of Israel, Chaim Weizmann. So Vera Weizmann, she was a medical doctor, helped form a Zionist organization for women, and it was precursor to Vizo. At the first Zionist conference held after World War I in 1920, the Women's International Zionist organization, Vizo, was founded in England by Vera Weizmann and Vera served as a co-treasurer. So this is Vera. He was very elegant, and you can, and the piece that I created that I combined in this page was something Tikkun Olam that referred actually to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And you can see here, Ruth Bader Ginsburg believed in Tikkun Olam, fixing the world. And she also collected collars. She always wore really interesting collars. So I put in my collections, I had the collar and I combine it in my collage. Tikkun Olam, fixing the world. So everything that the women did was fixing the world, was a Tikkun Olam. So that was Vera Weitzman. Another woman is Manya Shochat. She initiated the country's first collective settlement and helped to establish the Jewish defense group HaShomer. HaShomer means the guard, and they rode horses and guarded the different farms and protected the groves, the orange groves, and again, riding on horses. So this piece I collaged over an old radio, and you can see this guy that was part of HaShomer. Chassia Sukenik Feinsud, she created a new generation of teachers. She led the Hebrew seminary for kindergarten teachers. And I don't know if you know that in Israel, now we know people speak Hebrew in Israel, Hebrew, English, the main language is Hebrew, and the other language in Israel is Arabic. And she was active in the language wars. What is the language war? Milchemet HaSafot. The language wars were to speak Hebrew in the land. So the emerging of using the Hebrew was not so easy. So there was a war to use the language, the Hebrew language. And you can see here, the background is a map of Jerusalem that I created as a print, and the two kids writing in Hebrew, a New Year card, Shana Tova, to their parents. And again, the birds, the doves for peace, Shalom. So I always, Jerusalem and Yerushalayim and the Shalom and the kids. And my mother was a kindergarten teacher, so I always have a warm place in my heart for kindergarten teachers and for teachers and working with children and adults. And my mother also loved people and created different communities, and my father too. Fania Mitman Cohen, she was the first Hebrew high school teacher. She helped to establish in Palestine the first Hebrew high school, the Gimnasia Herzliya, that still exists in Tel Aviv, Herzliya Gimnasia, which became a center for cultural revolution and revival. She was a key figure in the Union of Hebrew Women for Equal Rights in Eretz Israel and the Legal Defense Office for Women in Domestic Disputes. So this is the picture of Fania, and under it you see part of the collage, which you see the alphabet letters in an interesting style, and a quote that you say usually actually when you get married. If I forget you, Jerusalem, my right hand will be numb. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, tishakach yemini. So you can see it, it's a print and collage, and it's part of a larger piece. But the style of the Hebrew letters, you know that in different eras there were different styles, and this is a very special style. Sarah Tehon, she really cared about economic independence, set workshops where girls learn arts and crafts and earned some money for producing various items. I don't know if you also heard about Moshe Dayan's wife, Ruth Dayan. She started an organization called Maskit, and she brought different immigrants that knew how to make different crafts, and she gave them jobs, and they created different crafts and sold them. And especially it was important for women to have some kind of professions. So you can see here the clothing that the women created and different crafts. So this was Sarah Tehon. Rachel, she was a poet, Rachel המשוררת. Everyone knows about her. She was very famous, and as children, she wrote many poems that became songs in Israel, and she was one of the most famous female poet. Her name was Rachel Blaustein Sela, and she she lived in Kinneret, Moshava, like a farm next to the Kinneret, and that's where her grave is. So sometimes people come with guitar and sing Rachel's songs, poems that became songs. She was known for her lyrical style and her poems and revolutionary simplicity and a conversational tone. The majority of her poetry is set in the pastoral countryside near the Kinneret. She never got married, and she always really wanted to have a child. So some of her poems talking about how she really wanted to have a child. Many of her poems echo their feelings of longing and loss. So this is Rachel, and again, after the talk, you can choose any women, or you can look again at my talk, and if you're interested in any of these women particularly, you can read more about her, about them, about Rachel, and about all the other women. But Rachel was something that I, even as a child, learned many of her poems by heart, and I know many of her songs. Anna Ticho, so I chose her because I love art. She actually was a very famous artist. Her husband, they lived in Jerusalem. Her husband was a very famous eye doctor. His name was Dr. Ticho, and this was Anna Ticho. Her works were first shown at the historic exhibition of local artists in the David's Tower, Migdal David, that still exists in Jerusalem. And this show was in 1922. Her style, you can see, this is a tree from Jerusalem. She used a lot of charcoal and pen and pencil in black and white. And she was a co-founder of, I don't know if you know about the most famous art school in Israel, Bezalel. So she was co-founder of the new Bezalel school, today the Bezalel Academy of Art. Now they built a very big campus, which you can visit in Jerusalem. And many famous Israeli artists learned there and in Bezalel, and they teach in Bezalel, and the graduates are very famous in the world. So this is an example of Anna Ticho's artwork. I love the tree. The trees in Jerusalem really have personalities. So in summary, which I mentioned before, so some of the new institutions pioneered by women pre-statehood, the adult health care, child and baby care, absorption of youth aliyah, as I mentioned, arts and culture, political power voting, new generation of teachers and students, young women education, training women for economic independence, defense, farming settlement, the Chavat Alamot that I mentioned, the females' farms, the Vitzo, and the emergence of a new Israeli women, a new style of Israeli women. So this is a summary of all the institutions that were pioneered and started by these women that still exist today. So they started it, and it still exists today. So what would we do without these women who started these organizations? So we owe a lot to these women. A new state, new Israeli woman of courage and leadership. So you know that the women now are involved in many places in the Israeli Knesset, in the army, and in many organizations. And you can see here in this piece a soldier, a woman who is in the army, and I use a quote which I love from Pirkei Avot: "The world stands on three things, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד, על התורה, on the Torah, ועל העבודה and the worship, ועל גמילות חסדים, on doing good deeds." על שלושה דברים העולם עומד, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. So you see again, my style is like Israeli salad. I combine different things, different documents and photos and whatever spark my imagination. This is an example of a modern woman. This is Rivka Karmi, who was an Israeli pediatrician and geneticist. She was the head of Ben Gurion University, the first woman president of Israeli University, Ben Gurion University in the Negev. So I was asked by the American friends of Ben Gurion University to prepare a piece for Rivka Karmi, when she retired. So I thought the piece can be about her. She was born in 1948. She always called herself a child of a state because she was born in 1948. And in this piece, I created the woman pioneer, which is Rivka was pioneer in her area of genetics. And you can see her, the bridge in Ben Gurion University, the DNA bridge. Ben Gurion, who was I don't know if you know that Ben Gurion was another visionary that he decided in the middle of his life to move to the Negev, to the southern part of Israel that was not so populated. People lived in big cities, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Ben Gurion showed an example of he moved to the Negev. So he is here, and they made a party for Rivka and gifted her this piece in the party. And this piece bridges, like the bridge of the DNA, it bridges between the idea of the Zionist women and until today to modern life. So you can see here Rivka, Ben Gurion, the Negev, the university, and a child of a state. So this is all has a link between past, present, and the future of science and leadership. And Rivka was a really big influence on many doctors, Arab doctors from the Negev, Bedouin doctors, Israeli doctors, Jewish doctors. So she worked with many communities. So you know that we don't do anything alone. Together, we win. Women get strength by working together and sharing ideas and working together as a group. So together we win in Israel, the US, and everywhere. In unity of women, there is strength. So this is another piece that I created. So here you can see Fania, how we started the talk with Fania, with Ed with Fania, and me as we can do it. This is in New York City. In unity of women, there is strength. And if you want to know more, I can share with you the waves of the Aliyah, how many people came in each year from 1904 to 1948. And you can read this information in your free time. And this is again, the last slide about me in Jerusalem. This is a piece, Yerushalayim Sheli, my Jerusalem. So it's me and my sister. And the background is the Tower of David. When I mentioned there was the first art exhibition by Anna Ticho, this is my mother and my older sister and me. And in the background is an old map of Jerusalem, Yerushalayim Sheli. If again, you want to stay in touch with me, ask me any questions, or you're curious about something, you have my email here, and Dvorah will share it, and my phone number, and you're all invited to visit me in New York City. It's not too far to take a plane from where you are to New York.
Okay. Yeah, so Michal,
Thank you so much.
yeah, so people have some questions. If you're willing to field some questions, are you willing to do that?
Sure.
Okay, so Sheila has a question. I'll move the microphone close to you,
Yeah.
Sheila, and then you can, I'll just put it here and then you
Yeah.
can talk.
You say that Golda Meir was one of two women who signed the scroll making Israel, forming the state of Israel. And you said there were 37 others. Who were the other women? Were they?
37 others were not.
They were men.
Oh,
but they
they're,
were
oh,
men.
they're, oh, we're not, oh, I see, yes. Oh, I see. So there were only the two.
Ben-Gurion.
Yes.
Yeah.
right.
No, the other were men. The other were men.
They were all-
Ben-Gurion and other ministers in the government,
okay.
in the
I
new
missed
government.
that.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks. Yeah.
Is there another question? Okay, Mendy has a question. Mendy, let me get this, moved closer to you though. Yeah, so.
What was Ben Gurion's attitude towards women?
I think he was very open. He was very supportive. It's not, one man, it's about the whole culture in the world was not so much, the first prime minister in the world was Golda Meir. So I think that, I didn't read so much about it, but I never read that Ben-Gurion was against women or didn't I think he was very supportive because, the women work in the fields, they work everywhere in the country, in the new country.
Yeah, I mean.
That's my husband.
Hi, so Ben-Gurion, like all leaders in this time, it was very self-centered on the mission at hand. So I don't think there was an issue around whoever can be helpful. He was extremely appreciative of what Golda Meir did around the time. She actually came to America to raise funds. She raised like $50 million at 48 pre-statehood, which was essential to allow the state to buy the weapon, etc., what they needed. And Ben-Gurion was, he had some girlfriends also, so he was really in his head of the needs. He had a very loyal and supportive wife, Paula, but he was just, like many other leaders, they just deal with their own needs and their own life and their own mission.
I think that it's more than that. I think that the leaders were so driven by the mission, the Zionist mission, that I don't think that, as Avi said, it's just women or men. It's just they had this idea to build a state, to make it as fast as possible, to give a safe place to the Jews. So that's what led them. It's not about women, men, and they appreciated everyone who could help.
I think for the.
But you know what? Maybe you can make your own research and tell me if you find something.
Yeah.
I think it was more the need of women helping more than anything, because the kids needed to be taught, the woman need to help a little bit more, maybe in food and cooking. I think maybe it was kind of.
Could you hear her okay, Michal?
Yes, like in the Bible, you know what they say about women? Help. You don't see any successful man without help of the women. Right. A woman next to him, or yes, so it's not. I don't think it was even a question, because you could see in governments in Israel that women, and in high positions over the years, in so many high positions everywhere, in the army, in developing ideas in medicine, in education. So there was not a problem in Israel about it.
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything political, but now is a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, I have a question, Michal. You talked about the language wars, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the language war.
So I read about, that in the Technion, which is a technical school, they taught in German, and there were many Jews who came from they were like taught in other languages, and they like to use these languages. And thanks to Eliezer ben Yehuda, that you can see in every city in Israel, a street named after Eliezer ben Yehuda. And actually Eliezer ben Yehuda was very active in this war, that everyone should speak Hebrew, and Hebrew is not only a language for praying, Hebrew is a language of daily life, and thanks to him, we speak Hebrew today, and that was part of the language war.
Yeah.
That
So it was
since he was born in school.
Go
What?
ahead. No, go ahead. I was gonna ask something else, but go ahead and finish.
No, I was saying that since a child is born, when a child goes to nursery school, regular school, is only Hebrew in Hebrew. And when Eliezer ben Yehuda's son, they said he was crazy, and he was, but thanks to his craziness, we speak Hebrew. He didn't allow his son to go downstairs to play with him because the other children didn't know Hebrew. And when his wife wanted to say something in another language, he hit her because he wanted her to speak only Hebrew.
Yeah.
He even didn't let his wife read a lullaby to their son, Itamar, when he was young in another language, only Hebrew.
Well, if it hadn't been for that, do you think that then they would have been speaking German at this point? Or do you think because people maybe were traumatized from that, what language would they have spoken had it not been Hebrew? I mean, I'm just asking what you predict it could have been if you have a thought.
Why Yiddish?
Maybe it would have been Yiddish. Yeah.
Maybe using Arabic, which there are many Arabs around, and maybe using biblical Hebrew terms.
Yeah. Or
because
maybe like Aramaic or something.
Don't forget the ultra Orthodox in Israel speak Yiddish.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Yiddish might have been. Yeah, but I'm wondering too if possibly Aramaic might have been revived too.
I'm not sure, I don't know, because Aramaic was starting to be forgotten. I think it's more Yiddish because that's the language, the best jokes were in Yiddish and the best expression. So more Yiddish was the language of the village, with the villages. Or when Jews came from Arab countries, Arabic. Jews came from different countries.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? I think there's maybe time for one more question. And then there's a possible, if you want, Michal has given us some materials for some art stuff. And I want you to take a look at that. If you want to stay, we have art supplies for the kids. And we have glue and we have paper and you could do things here. Or you could just take some of it home and keep it as a memento. Or you could take it home and do something at home and make maybe an art piece with it. And
I sent you pieces that envelopes that were first day cover. You can frame them actually. First day cover when stamps came out from 1948, 50s, 60s. It's an array of envelopes. You can use it. You can use the envelope to do a piece of collage on it. I was even thinking, it's Shabbat. If you're really influenced by the talk about the women, so maybe you can use a piece of paper, or use the envelope to even tear, not use scissors if you don't want, tear pieces of the other material. I send you also some old Israeli currency. You can use it for anything. Be creative, or just keep it as a memorabilia.
Where do you live?
She lives in Manhattan.
Where do I live?
Yes.
In the Upper West Side. The beautiful Upper West Side.
From there.
Hey, West 94th Street, yeah.
Who lives in 94th Street?
Oh, I'll show you,
Susanna.
raise your hands, Sue, so she can see. There you go.
Hi, Michal.
Hi. You grew up in Manhattan?
No, I grew up in Brooklyn, but after I married, we lived on the Upper West Side.
And then he moved to Windsor, Ontario. It's
a big room. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, actually, there's time for one more. I have do have a question. One of the women was active in women's suffrage movement. I forget who, but I was wondering.
Sarah
what-
Taron, I think.
Yeah. What's your question?
My question
Yes,
is,
Sarah Taron.
right, my
Sarah.
question is, what elections were going on in the pre-state era? I mean, this is during mandatory Palestine. What elections were people involved in?
Well, we don't really know as much, but clearly some of the ideas that were taken from America and elsewhere around empowerment of women, you know, it's part of the background.
Right.
Some of the places their election occurred were in the Zionist Congress, where women were able to contribute to the conversation and have some influence. So that's, you didn't really have political institutions at the time, it was more local, but the Zionist Congress, the annual Zionist Congress was one of the places that became a place to express you.
Yeah, that's great.
They were active.
Right.
Yeah.
I also want to tell you something about my love to art, an idea that I can plant in your head that maybe you can start. So I want to show something. So when I travel, it's in a very small format. So I take with me a notebook and I start to do collage according to the place that I travel to. So as I told you, I happened to be in Basel, in Switzerland, and I found an old, I always go to flea markets. And by the way, if someone wants to clean the house, don't throw anything. Call me first. So this is for a map of Lucerne, and I created it as a collage. So what you can do, you know, for collage, you don't have to be an artist. So you can start different collages in a notebook, and you can cut it by scissors, you can cut it by hand, you can add colors. This is an example of, I had an old gas station map, and I like, this is homage for Ed Drushka. And so anyway, what I want to say, that you learn something at the history of women in Israel, but in terms of art, if you're influenced by this and it sparks your imagination, you can start to create collages. So this is another class that I can teach, but this, you know, collage, very mixed media collage is very, very therapeutic. And what do we need in the world today? Therapy, right?
Yeah.
You know, I want to tell you something. Over COVID, I actually created by Zoom. Believe it or not, you don't have to be together in the same room. I led people by Zoom, art collages and pieces, and then we had the show. It's from a synagogue in New York. We had the show of the art pieces. It was amazing, and everything by Zoom. So as Herzl said, if you will it, it's not a dream.
About Michal.